Welcome to the BriteVibe podcast. At BriteVibe, we believe everyone deserves to be happy. But in today's world, everywhere you turn, there is division and negativity. At BriteVibe, we have created a global movement to bring 8 million people together who are inspired to live bright, live bold, and share bright vibes. Alone, it can be hard to change, but together we can change the world. Welcome to the BriteVibe podcast. All right, Phil Alves, welcome to the BriteVibe podcast. So happy to have you on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I feel like it's going to be, the next 30-ish minutes is going to be very educational for myself and other people listening, because we're going to delve into something we have not talked about it on the show before. You're actually the founder of two different companies. One's called DevSquad, D-E-V Squad, and then DevStats, D-E-V Stats. And ultimately, you help companies engineer SaaS software. And
Exactly.
so when we say, and I'm not even going to pretend to pretend to understand all of it. So, and this conversation is going to be, I think, a lot of value for anybody who's leading an organization, especially, entrepreneurial, you own a company, or you're a manager inside a company, or working inside a company where you could streamline, refine, hone processes and systems to make it easier to run, maybe more efficient. So what is SaaS?
So SaaS is kind of like how software started to be sold in the last 10 years. It used to be that we get a CD and you would put the CD in your computer and then you would install the software. And then you pay up front. You'd pay like $600, $1,000, or thousands of dollars, depending on the kind of software that you need to use.
Mhm.
And then you only pay once. So what the evolution of that was we moved from the desktop software for cloud softwares, usually in the web. And then companies start to charge a subscription. So QuickBooks is one of my favorite examples. QuickBooks,
Okay.
they have the enterprise old version. You had to
I
install.
think I still have that old version. Honestly, I do. We've got an old version. We actually use both the online and the old, but we've got an old version on a server somewhere in the world that we run, right? Remote
Exactly.
server.
So that's kind of like the previous version of how software was built, right? This is the legacy software. And SaaS, it's QuickBooks Online. You pay a subscription and you get to use the software. So a lot of the old software companies did that transition, but also what happened was companies that had internal tools. So let's say you have a construction company and you build this one internal tool to manage projects. But now you want to sell this tool, not just to use in-house, but you want other companies like yourself to be able to have that software. So then you go and you change your internal product into a SaaS product. Now is a multi-tenant application where, again, you can sell the license per year, per month.
Interesting. See,
And that's what a SaaS product is.
And what you're saying right there even is something that I didn't even think about, which is so it's software as a service. That's what SaaS stands for, right? But something you just said I wouldn't not have thought about, which is actually I could develop internal software for my company and then license that to other companies like mine, versus just building software for my company to be more efficient or to run better. I could actually license this to others. Is that?
Exactly, because like building your own custom software is very expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And usually if you're building a software for your company, you're an industry expert. You know the industry very well. You know more than just developers would know. And so that's your unfair advantage. And you get to test it in-house. You get to understand. And most of our very successful customers, they are people that went just for that transition. They had a company, they built a software for their company. And we even have clients that end up selling the original business and going 100% on the software only because the software was making a lot of money,
Interesting. Very interesting. So can you just give us some examples of, and maybe even some of the examples where you talked about that they built the software and then exited the original business and stayed in the software business? That's pretty entertaining right there. So Phil, walk us down that road of maybe 2 or 3 different companies you've worked with and kind of what was the evolution? Kind of how did you, get started with them, and then how did it evolve?
And before I go there, let me tell also why people like to do that. Many times our customers are going to have a business that it's worth like 3 times revenue. If they build a software business, it's going to be worth 6 to 10 times revenue. So when they go to sell that business, it's worth a lot more money. So some examples, we have this one guy and he was running a online retail, and he would sell things online and he would buy things that he would sell on Amazon and on Shopify. And his biggest issue was managing inventory. was
Right.
know how much to buy it and at what point. In an Amazon, if you run out of inventory, you lose rankings.
Okay.
So it's a very big deal. So he built a software to manage his inventory because he was doing everything in spreadsheet, and he didn't find anything that was exactly what he needs. So he built his own software.
Hmm.
And then he started selling that software, and sometimes the software was making more money than his retail business. So he sold his retail business and kept running just his software. But of course, his experience as an online retailer helped him know what to build for other online retailers. And then he
Hmm.
actually ended up exiting the second company too after a few years, and he sold that company too. And then it was for never work again kind of money, you know. So
Awesome.
so that was one example.
Hmm.
Another one was this person. She had a driving school, and again she built.
A driving school. So she
Yeah,
taught people how to drive a car. Is that what you're
exactly.
saying? Okay.
Yes, exactly. So she worked with like uh, basically students, high school students that are
Uh-huh.
like 16, and she had a bunch of cars, and then so she had to manage her cars, the maintenance, the schedule of everybody, and like other regulations. And again, she thought the products that were available for her industry weren't good enough and were built by people that never run a driving school before. So they didn't
Hmm.
understood actually what they need. So she went on and built her own internal software. Then she started selling that for other driving schools. And because she knew the industry, she knew which conferences to go to. She knew where her clients were.
Hmm.
And so that grew. And eventually she actually ended up selling the driving school. And now she just has the software. Uh,
Interesting.
so, and there's other examples. There's people that never sell for it. There's another client. He had a construction company, and then he built a software to manage projects and bid on projects, kind of like a CRM for
Hmm.
construction companies. And then he started selling that product for other companies, and now he has two. He still owns both companies, but he
Hmm.
has two entities that brings revenue in different ways.
Fascinating. 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 And so, what's involved in? So, can you give us an example of? Walk us into a company that you're either did work with or have worked with. Walk us into what was the problem they were having, kind of how you designed, helped them design software, and then how they implemented that. So we can get a more broad breadth of this is how this thing works.
Look, they're usually solving a problem using a bunch of tools, kind of like duct tape something together. Let's give
Okay.
the example of the customer that we talk about that had an online store. He had a Excel file where he would try to manage and make calculations on how much stock he need. And then he had another product here. So he was using a bunch of products to try to solve that one problem. And he thought, oh, this can be done by a software. If the software did this, this, and this, and this. So he knew what the software is supposed to do. And because he was solving that problem in a certain way, he knew what to do. So he hired us, we designed his idea. After we designed, he went and he tested out with a couple potential users to make sure that other people like the
Hmm.
idea. And then from there, he hired us to develop the product. And other times people just using a product that they hate. Like maybe we had a lot of people that were using Salesforce and they hate Salesforce,
Mm. Hmm.
but they want to build a CRM for a specific niche market. Like there's a financial advisor that wants a CRM just for financial advisors. Then he hired us and he's like, this is how Salesforce work. This is what I like. This is what I hate. I want to make something lighter weight that's just for financial advisors. And then we would help them basically same process, get their idea to a design, test with users, and then go and build after that.
And then how long does and again I know that may be all over the board, but in general, if you could kind of average everybody, how long does it take kind of from somebody calling and saying, "Hey," or emailing or whatever they do, FaceTiming you, I don't know, whatever, however they get a hold. But if they're looking to work with a company to develop their own software, how long from the time of, "Hey, I've got this idea," to kind of then where does it go from there?
Yeah, so first we will work with them on a 6 weeks workshop, which we call Sprint Zero, and you go design their product. And we're going to spend 6 weeks really understanding the problem they want to solve. Many times we invite them to fly to Utah, and we can have go to a whiteboard and
Hmm.
discuss the problem. But at the end of the 6 weeks, we're going to have a design of how the product is going to look like and a prototype that we can use to test with potential users and make sure that that adds real value. And then after that, we go and build version 1 of the product. Usually it's going to take anywhere from 4 to 6 months to
Oh,
build
okay.
the version 1. And
Mhm.
then I like to say that's never going to be done,
Right.
because people are going to ask new features and you're going to have to keep developing, keep improving. So I like to say software is either making money or not making money, but it's not done. So we need to get to making money, because it's not going to be done.
Right. Yeah. It's an ever evolving because
Yeah.
right. Because the market's changed, right? The
Mhm.
market's ever evolving. Software is ever evolving. You can do
Yeah,
more.
people are having
more.
ideas. Can we do this? Can we do that? What if we did this? So you get a lot of feature requests once we have a software product.
Interesting. Is there any other thing that you'd be like, I want business owners as you're a business owner, you're an entrepreneur. Is there anything else that you think it would be important or critical for business owners to understand about SaaS that maybe there's confusion in the market?
No, I think it's a very hot market for people that want to get into SaaS. The one thing I like people to understand, it's gonna be a long road. Like, of course, it's super profitable because you can scale a lot, and you don't have to keep adding people,
Mhm.
but you're gonna lose money for 2 to 3 years.
Hmm.
And so that's why most people that build SaaS, successful SaaS, they're bootstrapping those SaaS, which are most people. Like less than 1% of startups actually raise money.
Mhm.
And most people that are successful, they are doing their second, their third, their fourth business. Software is usually not their first business,
Right.
because it's expensive and it's going to take a long time. Now, once you get over the ramp and then you're profitable, then you're thinking like 60-70% profit margin, but it's going to take you a couple years to get there.
Got it. Got it. Got it. And so typically, from a time and a cost standpoint, we kind of covered the time, but from a cost standpoint, what do you see in the market? Kind of what should be kind of some highs and lows and some generalizations of what does it take to get to any one of those products? And you can give any one of those as an example of financially, what did it take financially to get those products to work first in the business itself and then eventually scale?
Yeah, you can expect to invest anywhere from 150 to $300,000 per year.
Got it.
And then, like I said, it's never going to be done. It's per year. So the way they like to tell people to think, okay, if you're going to spend 300,000 per year, how are you going to get to the break even point? How many customers do you need to get to cover 300,000? Because the expense is never going to go away. And that's
Mm,
a mistake that people make. They think, oh, I'm going to build it. It's going to be done. And you're going to always need developers. Uh, it might be the original company, original developers, or someone else, but you always need developers. So that's basically becomes a line in your P&L,
mm,
and you have to figure out how I'm gonna. If you, Yeah, I think it's possible to do with 150 per year in the low end, but then you
mhm,
have to think, okay, how I'm gonna make this thing make at least 150 per year,
mhm.
so it can pay for itself. And of course, there's other costs. There's marketing, the server, so at least $200,000 per year, I would say.
Just to
Is
run just to
it's
kind of maintain the software.
Yeah.
And is that for basically any business or really just a business that's trying to sell to other businesses?
A business that starts out to other business. Now, when people are building internal tool, it's gonna cost about the same. But internal tools, you can stop developing. You can be like, "Hey, this is what we wanted to do," and then you stop it, and then you don't have customers that are always complaining or going to your competition. So you don't have. You can. It might be a 6 months or a 12 months project for internal tool,
Hmm,
but yeah. But most of those internal tools, they end up developing to a software that you sell for other people.
got it. And so what are some industries right now that you're seeing that that are either kind of trending and really there's a lot of growth potential and industries that you're like, you know, there really could be some help in these industries that aren't really applying any SaaS to it. Are you seeing specific like I guess trends and also opportunities?
Yeah, it's interesting because every time that someone come to us, we're like, "Oh my gosh, that's such a gap in the market," but it's
Right.
hard for us to identify. It's kind of like relies on our customer because they are the industry expert.
Right.
So they're coming from all the different industries. So and they are saying, "Hey, in my industry, I have an issue where the products there are very outdated." It's usually smaller industry where big companies, big players don't want to play.
Mhm.
Another example, think like a software to manage a shooting range,
Oh,
right?
wow. Uh-huh.
So it's kind of very, very niche down.
Yeah.
And so big players not gonna play her there. And then someone is gonna be like, hey, I have been owning a shooting range store for many years, and the things that we use to do background check and to manage our inventory is very outdated. I want to build something better and sell for other people like me. So those are the people that build. So I don't actually know which
Hmm.
industry. It's like you just need that person that's the real expert. That's going to be the unfair advantage. That is going to understand what the industry need.
And really, y- I'm sure there's a lot of, like, to your point, niches where nothing has been, or very weak applications have been built because there's not been the money there for just a software company to be like, oh, we're gonna do a product just for shooting ranges, because there's
Mhm.
just not enough dollars in it for them to spend millions on it. Is that kind of what you're
Yeah,
saying?
yeah. So the smaller companies are the players in that space, and then sometimes they're even big players, but they are outdated. So their software is very old, and they didn't update it, and it's not super user friendly. So that's usually where there's a lot of opportunities. Where they're like, hey, there's the dental space, for example. That's another one that I know that all the softwares, the dental space, the dentists use are
Mhm.
very old school and very outdated. And so
Interesting.
there's three big ones, and those are the ones that everyone use. So if a person come and build the fourth one and build something that's more modern, you really understand your competition. And even though those companies are big, like Henry Shine is a public company and plays in that space, but it's very outdated software. So it would be a good place for people to go and
Interesting.
try to enter.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because that, there's a ton of dentists and there's a lot of money in dentistry, so that makes sense that there's big players in the space, but then they just get out of touch, you think, with the actual end user's experience.
Yeah,
And
yeah, they're like legacy companies. They're very big, and they built their product 20 years ago, and they haven't updated much since then. It's built on a very old foundation, and they're just milking their cow. They're not
Mhm.
thinking about the next step. So it's an opportunity for people to come and, okay, I'm gonna make something better
Hmm.
for this space.
Hmm. That's interesting. Well, thank you for all that. Again, is there something that you would want, because you're obviously the expert in this field? Is there something, before we kind of wrap up here, that you'd be like, hey, I think this would be helpful for people considering it. You already talked about, the kind of the costs and what to expect. I think it's very valuable that people think about the ongoing cost, not just because I've looked at doing apps and some other stuff like that, and in those cases there's a pretty big upfront fee, but there wasn't necessarily that this is going to be the ongoing fee, right?
Mhm.
This isn't a one and done. You don't raise the money and then it's especially to your point when you're selling it to other businesses, because they're going to want tweaks and upgrades and updates and all that.
Yeah, another thing like that people can think about it, like look at your competition. How many developers they have on staff? They usually are adding developers every year, not reducing because they're trying to grow, they're trying to stay ahead. Think like Zoom, they keep adding developers. Oh, the product is the same, but they keep adding developers, they keep improving, they keep trying to do things here and there. So it's a misconception that's going to be done even for an app. Think about how many updates any app that you use
Mhm.
receives, like so I use an app to check on the weather when I do flight planning. I'm a pilot,
Oh,
that's always updating. I use an app like Facebook, and it's always updating. So it's never done. Software, it's never done. That's what I like to tell people from day one. And we wouldn't be in business if software would be done.
right.
you know?
Right. If people have questions for you about, hey, could you turn this into a software? They just go to your website,
Yeah,
philalves.com, or they go to your company
yeah.
website?
Yeah, they can go to my company website, DevSquad.com, and then usually what a lot of people do, they will work with us in the initial 6 weeks to design and work with their concept and test it
Mhm.
before they go and spend a bunch of money. So the initial phase, people are spending anywhere from 15 to $20,000. So it's
Mhm.
not a huge investment to
Right.
plan and to get the software uh, to the market. Kind of like to make sure there's a market for your product, and then you
Mhm.
can start making some projections and think, is that something worth building? Like, okay, if I get 100 customers paying this much, then I'll break even, or 50 customers, or whatever the number is. You're able to use that concept and the prototype to test that out.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, thank you for coming on today. This, like I said, this wasn't something I like when we spend some time diving into some actual tactical. A lot of times we talk about mindset on the show. We talk about kind of you know evolution of business and things like this. But I really like this kind of strategic. Hey, this is something I could apply in my business, but not only apply in my business, but actually become, if it worked, become a revenue source, revenue generation for my business, that makes my business better, but then also helps me make my company worth more in the end, right?
For sure. For
Yeah.
sure.
Very cool. Well, thank you for your time today, Phil. Appreciate it. Look forward to maybe seeing you out in the world sometime. If I ever make it to Utah, I'll look you up.
That sounds great. Thank
All
you.
right. Thanks, Phil. Thank you for being a part of the BriteVibe podcast. For more information, go to britevibe.com. That's BRITE Vibe, VIBE.com. Thank you for listening.